Without hesitation, a private pilot called security and prevented a black guy from boarding his own aircraft. As the black BMW pulled up to Hangar 6, little bursts of dust were kicked up against the tires by the warm, dry wind blowing off the tarmac at Nuys Airport. A little after 8:30 a.m. Jalen had shown up just as planned. As usual, calm and composed, he got out of the car without hurrying. A clean black t-shirt was thrown over a navy suede jacket. Clean sneakers. He slipped his sunglasses inside the front of his shirt. He appeared to be the type of man who had a place to be, but wasn't eager to show it. A young ramp agent acknowledged him briefly from the corner before making his way to the back of the hangar. The Gulfstream G280 was sitting on the tarmac, preparing its engines and lowering its stairs. The dawn sun gave the plane a slight sheen. Jalen approached it with the calm assurance of someone who had met with logistical partners while flying this route thousands of times before, from Los Angeles to Kansas City. He wasn't in the mood to talk, but he was mentally calculating how to reorganize a department and convince his CTO to accept new employees. However, a voice broke through the silence behind him as he took the first step. "Pardon me, sir." When Jalen stopped and turned slightly, he noticed a tall man approaching him wearing aviator sunglasses. Slim, perhaps in his mid-50s, with a starched and neat flight uniform. Already, he appeared irritated. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Jalen inquired. He wasn't defensive, just interested. A few feet distant, the pilot halted and examined him. "A private flight is planned for this aircraft. I will require verification and identification. We cannot permit unapproved boarding." Jalen blinked. For a moment, he believed it to be a prank. However, the man's face remained unbroken. No grin, not even perplexity, only suspicion. "That jet belongs to me," Jalen said coolly. "This morning I'm the one taking the plane to Missouri." The pilot squinted his eyes. "All right, I'm Elvis too." Jalen laughed softly, the kind of laugh you give when you're debating whether to escalate or to overlook something. "Dispatch can be called. The manifest has my name on it." The pilot's arms were crossed. "You think I'll think you own this jet? Look, regardless of who you claim to be, you will not approach this airplane unless an authority figure has given the all-clear." In an apparent attempt to corroborate Jalen's account, he took a radio from his belt, turned slightly away, and spoke softly into it. Or perhaps refute it. Jalen remained still. He kept his hands at his sides. "Don't yell. Don't pretend. Simply be patient." He had experienced similar circumstances in the past, though not exactly this one. However, this time it burned in a different way. The pilot made a U-turn. 2 minutes from now, security will arrive. "I'm sure they'll make things right, if you are the owner." Jalen muttered, "You're going to feel really dumb in 2 minutes." The pilot grinned, but not in a pleasant way. "I don't think so." Jalen took a step back, took out his phone and made a call. 2 rings. He said into the phone, "Hey, it's me. With your Van Nuys pilot, you might want to get someone on the radio. He is preventing me from getting on board." "No, he doesn't know who I am." There was a brief silence. "Yes, I'll hold off." A little black SUV bearing the security name drove up behind him as he hung up. After glancing around, 2 men emerged and approached the pilot first. The pilot remarked, "This guy says he owns the plane." Drew no identification. "I wanted to avoid taking any chances." The guard turned to face Jalen. He scowled for a moment, before his stance changed a little. "Recognition. Hold on. Are you Mr. Rhodes?" Jalen gave a nod. "That's correct." The pilot turned to face the guard. "You might want to speak with dispatch on the line, sir." At this moment, however, what followed would change everything, and reveal an error the pilot was unable to undo. The pilot's expression froze. He looked at the guard, and then back at Jalen as if he was trying to figure out the solution in his mind, and was shocked by the result. With the radio still halfway to his mouth, the pilot said, "Wait, you're who?" "Rhodes," said Jalen coolly. "Jalen Rhodes." After a little silence, the pilot scoffing softly and doubtfully. "All right, and you're an investment of some sort." He wasn't neutral in the way he stated investor. It was heavy. It seemed as though he was attempting to put Jalen in a box that would help him understand the issue better. As if being an investor was the only plausible explanation for why someone like Jalen could be claiming ownership of a $21 million jet while standing at its steps. Jalen looked him in the eyes, and replied, "No, I am the company's owner." The words fell flat. The pilot remained unflinching. He simply exhaled, as if he were getting bored with whatever game he believed was being played. Meanwhile, the security guy had moved aside, and was already radioing another individual. His expression had shifted. The second guard continued to look at the pilot, not Jalen. Jalen went on, "I don't have to show you my ID, so I won't. The business is not rented. The aircraft does not have a charter. It is my." The pilot slowly shook his head, but it was obvious that his confidence was beginning to waver. The pilot whispered, "Look, I've been in this business for a long time, and I don't take chances when someone shows up without being verified. Okay, so you claim to be the company's owner. However, the way you dressed and rolled up simply didn't match." And there it was. The attire, the mindset, the silence. Not loud enough, not showy enough. Too young, insufficiently white, to give the impression that his position was more procedural than personal. Jalen remained mute for a moment while observing the pilot struggle. "Have you ever wondered if you might not be able to identify power when it doesn't appear to be what you're used to?" Jalen inquired. The pilot remained silent. Then in his hand, Jalen's phone buzzed. He took a small step back and responded. He said. "He is still standing here. Yes, I'll hold off." The time was clear enough that he didn't even need to identify the other person. After clearing his throat, one of the guards gestured to the pilot. "Sir, you might want to talk to dispatch. Right now." The pilot turned and raised his radio once more, still attempting to maintain his dignity. "This is Captain Turner from Hangar 6, base. There's a man here who says he owns Rhodes Air. Jalen Rhodes is the name. Claims ownership of the aircraft." A voice on the other end answered after a brief period of stillness, but it was too low for Jalen or the guards to hear. Captain Turner tensed up. "Yes sir, I get it." His gaze flicked back to Jalen as he turned, but this time it held a different meaning. Something more tense. His lips were thin as he lowered the radio. "Well, there must have been a misunderstanding," he remarked, clearing his mouth. Jalen remained expressionless. He remained silent. Captain Turner made another attempt. "I was not told that the owner would be joining us today. According to Jalen, I didn't think I needed to give anyone a heads up to board my own jet." His voice remained the same, still the same, still really sharp. Neither of the two guards moved. It appeared that everyone was waiting for Turner to make a wise statement, something elegant. However, it was not in him. He tried to follow protocol by saying, "I was doing my job," more to the guards than to Jalen. Jalen looked over at the SUV. He questioned the guard nearest him. "You all good?" The man gave a nod. "All good, sir." Suddenly, a different voice could be heard over the pilot's radio. This time, it was louder, and Jalen heard it last. "Stand by. You'll be released from duties right away. You should not continue with this flight." Turner's eyes slightly widened. He stepped back from the gathering, looking down at the gadget, as if praying it had malfunctioned. Jalen looked over at him. "Now you know." However, the reason Jalen initially purchased the entire business, and the reality of that secret ownership had much deeper origins. Captain Turner remained motionless, clutching the radio, as if he was unsure whether to toss it or implore it to say something else. However, it had stated its position, released from responsibility, right away. He turned to look at the jet again, the one he had thought was his 10 minutes before. He had flown the same jet to Miami, Phoenix, and Scottsdale, the one he boasted about while drinking in the Burbank officers' lounge. It was now, evidently, owned by the man he had attempted to force off the steps. Owned the business, owned him. Once more, the radio buzzed. A new, quieter, female voice spoke up this time, saying, "Captain Turner, please report to Terminal Office 2. Don't start the takeoff. Don't communicate with the client anymore." He didn't answer at all. He simply stared at the tarmac while lowering his hand to his side. Jalen inhaled sharply through his nostrils. No sigh, not comfort. When something you've seen coming yet hits differently, when it finally does, you take that particular breath. He looked over at the guards. "Thank you. I believe we're doing well here." With a small nod, one of them moved in the direction of the security car. For a moment, the other remained behind, watching Turner return slowly, his steps dragging, toward the terminal building. Jalen refrained from boasting. He didn't grin. Rather, He glanced at his watch before turning back to the jet. During the chaos, the co-pilot, a younger man, with a perplexed expression, had gone halfway down the stairs. So far, he had been silent. Now, however, he acknowledged Jalen, with a nod, and moved aside to make room. A quiet, "Sorry about that, Mr. Rhodes," he said. Jalen took a while to reply. "Afterwards, you flying this today?" "Sir, if you would like me to, I've been cleared." After examining him for a moment, Jalen nodded once, and went up the stairs without saying anything else. The jet cabin was sleek and cool inside. Seats are cream leather, walnut trimming, silent elegance, just flavor, nothing more. Leaning forward to unlock his tablet, he sat down after dropping his bag on the seat nearest the front, and rolling up one sleeve. As the crew started pre-flight, the airplane door firmly shut behind him. Jalen reclined, and gazed out the window. He had stopped thinking about Turner, at least not directly. He was considering why he had initially purchased the business. Ego had not been the cause, not even convenience had played a role. He had experienced something similar, on another private aircraft 2 months prior, this time, as a client, less dramatic, no protection. The pilot's voice had a lingering tone, the sort that made it obvious that he didn't believe Jalen should be there. They arrived in Boston late. Jalen never voiced any complaints. However, after arriving home, he poured himself a glass of scotch, and gazed at the wall for a while. Then he grabbed the phone. "Find out who owns that air charter company," he continued, calling his lawyer, a peaceful force in Walnut Creek, discreetly. "Within a month, please." Through a holding company, he held a majority stake. The leadership was replaced, rearranged the activities, never entered the headquarters at all. They didn't need to recognize him. All he needed to know was that they would reconsider making snap judgments about people based on their skin tone, or the shape of their jeans. The aircraft started to taxi. Jalen gazed at the horizon, as he raised his head from his screen. The sky was clear, open to the public. However, news of what had transpired that morning had already started to circulate, before the wheels had even lifted off the ground, and things were going to quickly become extremely public. With a quiet hum under the cabin floor, the jet lifted off the ground. Jalen was hardly aware. His thoughts were already elsewhere. 2 months ago was the day that everything began to change. He boarded that charter out of Phoenix on a Thursday afternoon. He had recently concluded a contract renewal with a supplier. He felt exhausted, but in a positive way. Without raising your voice, the kind that follows victory. The pilot remained silent as he climbed onto the aircraft, hardly gave him a glance, only a shortened welcome aboard. And that was all. At first, Jalen didn't care. He had no intention of forming friendships. However, little items accumulated during the flight, a service interruption, an artificially courteous tone. Additionally, the pilot ignored Jalen entirely when they landed and talked to his assistant, as if she were the client. It wasn't hostile, simply cold. Jalen remained silent. Then no. However, he recalled, he made the choice 3 days later, while enjoying a glass of Lagavulin on his Oakland back patio. Not a noisy one, a silent one, without much fanfare, the kind that moves mountains. He said to Maxine Gwen, his lawyer, over the phone, "I want to own something that makes people rethink how they see success." Maxine did not recoil. She was familiar with him. She had assisted him in purchasing 2 logistics firms, Nevada's whole fiber optic network, as well as a chain of boutique hotels in Santa Barbara, all without the original filings ever mentioning his name. She questioned, "What am I buying this time? An air charter service?" She let out a breath. "You want to build one?" "No," Jalen replied. "I want the one I flew with last week." "Copy that." He got it 6 weeks later. Aviation Rhodes, 6 jets, not just one, an operating team, not simply pilots. He failed to appear at work, didn't insist on having his name inked on the tail. He had no desire to attract notice. However, everyone in the boardroom was now aware of who had signed their checks. Furthermore, it went beyond the events of that Phoenix flight. The spark was that, in boardrooms where he had to say his title 3 times before someone stopped thinking he was a visitor, the true heat had been brewing for years. Other executives leaned toward his assistant, rather than him during pitch meetings. He was asked if he was picking someone up in the valet lanes. He didn't shout, never created any scenes. However, he recognized every face. Purchasing the charter business was not retaliation. On the board it was a move, a method of communicating without using words. It all came full circle as he sat in that jet. His jet, watching Captain Turner go as if the earth had suddenly moved beneath him. Jalen was no stranger. Loud money wasn't who he was. He has a calm power that doesn't require attention. As it's the room, he texted Maxine. Jet crew situation handled. After picking up his phone once more, inform the operations team that a new captain will be required. Instead of looking at resumes, I want someone who looks at people. Almost immediately she replied. Got it. I'll take care of it. Jalen put down the phone. For a moment the co-pilot entered the cabin and inquired if he needed anything. Jalen gave a headshake. Thank you. I'm doing fine. After giving a brief nod, the man vanished back into the cockpit. Beyond the window, below the terrain was a mosaic of green and gold. Central California, close to Modesto. It appeared serene. However, Jalen was already planning 3 steps forward in his mind. This would not remain confidential, since someone had been filming on the tarmac, from behind a fuel truck, quietly. Additionally, the video had already gone viral when Jalen arrived in Kansas City. Jalen had 15 missed calls by the time the plane landed in Kansas City. From his assistant 3, Maxine's 1, the remainder from unknown numbers, reporters probably, a couple of opportunists perhaps. The folks who recall your name out of the blue when you find yourself on their timeline on the internet. None of them received a response from him. However, the text continued coming in. You're trending, bro. On that jet clip are you? You cooked that pilot, tell me. You have to watch the comments, man. He wasn't shocked. There was always someone filming. That is the current world. A moment is something that is captured, edited, posted and examined in real time. It is not merely something that occurs. And there it was. In a shaky 48-second video, Jalen is seen standing composedly at the foot of the jet stairs as Captain Turner yells at him. Even though the audio was not flawless, you could clearly hear the words, "Don't care who you say you are. The owner cannot be you. There will be security soon." The security guard then intervened. The co-pilot appeared uneasy. You ever think maybe you can't recognize power when it doesn't look like what you're used to? Said Jalen in a cool, collected tone. Like fire on parched grass. That line went viral on the internet. Soon after, the hashtags began to appear. #Jalen Rhodes, #net worth, #private jet towner, #fired fast. This is why we. A jumble of cheers, arguments and annoyance filled the comment sections. He was commended by some for his composure. Similar tales of undervaluation were told by others. Some resisted, wondering if Turner had simply been carrying out his duties. Jalen remained silent. He had never required strangers' approval. Rather, he took a seat in the rear of a black SUV, rolling in the direction of his hotel downtown, and peered out the window at the reflections rather than the city. For the rest of your life, you grind. Construction, keeping low, until your actions do the talking. Additionally, someone will still attempt to gauge your value even after they do. By your speech, mannerisms or attire. He wasn't upset. He was worn out. Not the sort of exhaustion that sleep cures. The type that becomes ingrained in your bones. When someone believes you are the assistant for the 1000th time. At the hotel again, he didn't linger as he walked past the foyer. Some visitors raised their heads from their phones. That's him, one woman mouthed as he went by. He didn't go slowly, went directly to the elevator, climbed to the penthouse, and took a seat at the long table with a view of the city. After filling a glass with water, he eventually accessed Maxine's message thread. She had provided a link. He made a click. A split-screen morning news segment. The video of the altercation is on one side. Conversely, a host states, "We've recently found out that Mr. Jalen Rhodes owns the entire charter business, in addition to the jet. According to reports, that pilot has been removed of duty." They referred to it as an eye-opening incident that raises questions about implicit bias, wealth and perception. Asterisk. Jalen paused the video after a brief minute of viewing. He already understood that people only believe what they are accustomed to seeing, so he didn't need an anchor to confirm it. They will also doubt the reality they are facing if you don't meet the mental image they have of you. With his phone in hand, he got up and went to the balcony. From this vantage point, The city appeared to be little. The individuals, unseen. He wasn't demeaning anyone. However, he was above the cacophony. Noise was not the topic of what followed. Clarity was the key, and a choice Jalen was unable to postpone any longer. That night, Jalen didn't get much sleep. The headlines didn't affect him. They arrived and left. Nor was he concerned about the company's reputation. Rhodes Aviation, if anything, in under 12 hours, I received more free attention than most startups do in a year. No, what woke him up was the choice he had yet to make. Whether to make it final, or loud. He sipped black coffee while sitting by himself at the little table in the suite's corner. As the sun began to peek over the skyscrapers of Kansas City, in front of him, his laptop was glowing. An HR report, a draft of Captain Turner's official apologies, a courteous request to think again. Turner likely believed that sending it late would lessen the impact. It didn't. There was no apology in the message. It was self-preservative. I wasn't told. I have years of experience flying high-level clients. There were other ways to tackle this. Jalen gave it 2 readings. The man never once inquired about what it was like to be told you didn't belong. He never once admitted that the process itself was the true problem, not the documents, the presumption. And Jalen was unable to ignore that aspect. Reaching for his phone, he dialed Maxine. On the first ring she responded. "Let me guess, you've made your decision." "Yeah," replied Jalen. "He's done. Want me to put it through quietly?" "No," Jalen said, reclined in his seat. "Not this time." The person on the other end paused. "You sure?" "Yes. He would have left by now if this had been anyone else. I'm not going to preach that your apology is more important than your presumptions." Maxine remained silent. She got it. "All right." Jalen hung up the phone and got to his feet, releasing the tension in his shoulders. "I'll take care of it." He wasn't upset. He had no desire for vengeance. However, allowing Turner to remain would imply that the incident was irrelevant, and that being fired on your own land might be justified with the correct justification. Furthermore, that was not going to work. Not with him. He gave the operations lead one final message saying, "Captain Turner is permanently removed from duty as of today. If HR demands it, give him a severance package. But we won't be retaining him in any way, not even an exclamation point. No extra sentiment, just business." He shut down the laptop and went back to the window. With cars below, people on the sidewalks, morning shows buzzing, and everyone conversing, the city was now fully awake. However, Jalen had taken the necessary action to uphold a standard, not to make a point. Building the table was insufficient in his universe. It was up to you to determine who should be seated there. Turner had demonstrated that he didn't, not because he made a single error, but rather because he continued to fail to understand it after it was pointed out. With a gentle knock, Jalen's aide opened the door. She was carrying a paper coffee cup, a tablet, and a folder. After setting the things on the table, she questioned, "Is everything okay?" "Yes," Jalen replied. "Handled." She sat down to review his calendar, after giving him a knowing glance. Before she started though, she looked up and remarked, "I've never had so many friends text me about my boss. That video really hit people." Jalen grinned. "You tell them that I'm just a jet-loving guy." She chuckled. "I told them that I started dressing better because of you." They both laughed. After then, work resumed. However, it was what it showed about who is questioned and who is trusted that stayed with Jalen long after that morning, not the choice itself. Without uttering a single word, Jalen returned to Oakland after 3 days. The news stories had changed. A new controversy, a new moniker, a new wave of indignation elsewhere. That's the way it goes. However, the film continued to circulate, subtly, relentlessly. 15 million views instead of a few million. Podcasts, thought pieces, and even reaction films were created using clips from the altercation. His composure was lauded by several. As usual, others dissected it, arguing over delivery, attire, and tone. None of it received a response from Jalen. He didn't. But after that, an odd thing occurred. The emails began to arrive. Not the typical kind. Not proposals for partnerships or pitches. These were intimate. One came from a young man who handled baggage in Minneapolis. He claimed that he recognized himself in Jalen, and that he was always thought to be ignorant by those at the airport. He remarked that he felt seen when he saw someone like Jalen maintain his position without shouting. Another was from an Arizona woman. She added that her own pilots had previously made similar assumptions while operating a small charter service. She expressed her gratitude to Jalen for demonstrating accountability to the industry. Dozens more were like that. Don't use hashtags. No shows, just actual people who were aware of what had transpired, since they had experienced it themselves. That's what Jalen retained. Not the film, not the popular tags. The hidden reality is that people are sick of having their built spaces questioned. Furthermore, this wasn't Jalen's first room. That wouldn't be the final one. However, this one was significant, because it made him remember something he had forgotten. It is draining to be undervalued. However, there are instances when it's the most useful tool you have, because you are already purchasing the building while they are busy evaluating you. He strolled inside the deserted hangar of Rhodes Aviation's new plant south of Oakland, late that night. The silence was such that you could hear your own breathing. A tail light was being worked on by one of the maintenance teams. From the other side of the floor, a cleaner waved. Jalen moved in the direction of the closest jet, the one that started it all. He left it untouchable. I just stared at it for a while. After that, he turned back and left. He stopped at a notice board close to the staff lounge as he approached the exit. It included a new flyer with the company's updated goal statement, maintenance schedules, and birthday notices. Although he hadn't authored it, someone had taken the words from a statement he made years ago. Loudness isn't a sign of respect. It depends on how you handle silence. Jalen grinned. Just enough. Not too big. The sky outside had become darker. The air cooler. Without a word, he slid into the seat, opened his car, and drove off. Since the message was already out there, it's not always about establishing your identity. It's about letting the truth speak for itself, and refusing to back down when someone tells you you're not enough. Consider the times when someone attempted to gauge your value, without knowing your weight, if this story touched you. Next, follow Jalen's example. Remain firm. Create your legacy in silence. Instead, let their presumptions cost them. For more authentic stories that hit a distinct note, subscribe.